Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers defeat the Chicago Blackhawks 6-1 at Madison Square Garden to snap a six-game losing streak. This was a game that I definitely wanted the Rangers to lose. Look, I've been rooting against the Rangers, you know, for a while now. And this game was almost similar to the Calgary Flames game in terms of where it was in the standings, the circumstances behind it. And at least if the Rangers were going to win, at least it was in blowout fashion where they absolutely deserved to win the game. And you did get a lot of rookies with their firsts. Dylan Garand, his first NHL win in his second start. And really, at this point, he gives you, I think, a better chance to win than Jonathan Quick right now. And you look to next season, I think that there's a good chance that, um, Garand could be the backup. I definitely think that's very much in play. Short sample size, but he's looked pretty good in just a couple of starts. You get the first goal for Adam Sykora in his second game, first at Madison Square Garden. And then you also get Drew Fortescue in his debut, his NHL debut. He gets an assist. So that's good. Now, look, it's against a very bad Chicago Blackhawk team, but, they all count the same. And if you're going to win, at least it's that way. But look, this was not great in terms of giving yourself the best chance possible come lottery time. With 9 games to go now, look, this can still go either way. And I'd like to believe that with the Rangers' recent 6-game losing streak, that there's a very good chance that the worst that they would be pre-lottery would be number 4. Vancouver's number 1, and I think it's a battle right now between the Rangers, Chicago, and Calgary to see who ends up 2, 3, and 4. Not to say, again, there's enough time left where if, let's say, the Rangers did win some games, which we'll talk about, there is a little bit of a possibility there that, look, there are, I think about San Jose, like, they've really been struggling. On the flip side there, though, at some point, they're probably going to win again. But, the Blues have been so good lately. You have Winnipeg that's in the vicinity there, but I think you really need to kind of focus in on Chicago and Calgary. And unfortunately, here in March, the Rangers earlier in the month did, beat Calgary handily, and then they beat Chicago in this one as well. The other good news, or not news, but at least the Rangers lost regulation in Calgary and in Chicago. So it ends up being an even situation. It'd be more frustrating if somehow, because of the head-to-head that, let's say the Rangers won both games against Chicago or both games against Calgary, and that ends up kind of being the difference. That's a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow. So I'm fine with the way it turned out. I would have been really frustrated if somehow the Rangers sort of found a way to win an ugly game, 3-2 in regulation or 4-3 or whatever it might be, kind of a down to the wire game. But simply put, and this is why it was similar to that Calgary game. Chicago gave it a pretty good shot in the first period. They were coming off a game where they got absolutely destroyed against the Flyers. Similar to the other game where Calgary, if I remember correctly, they had lost to Washington the night before. Now, the difference there is the Rangers, they themselves were also coming off of a back-to-back on that one, so it was kind of on even ground. But I digress, and Jonathan Quick was in that for that one. But here, the second period was all Rangers. And it was done at that point. It was, by the end of the second period, you knew this game was over. So, we talk a lot about the standings, obviously, and for me, that's kind of where my head's been at for the most part. But again, some good stuff as far as, the young players. And so the lineup changes that come with that was that Drew Fortescue's in the lineup and Vincent Iorio is out. And all things being equal, I would expect to kind of see this 6 defenseman, as long as they're healthy, to kind of be that way the rest of the year. You never know, but that feels pretty set. Again, if health is there, right? So Gavrikov Fox is the first pair. What ends up kind of happening is, the second pair essentially. See, the ice times are tough to tell in this game because the score got so lopsided that Drew Fortescue played 17-23. I don't expect that to be the case. I'm totally fine if they wanted to do that, but I don't think that'd be the case for the most part. So, call it as you will. We won't even label it for now, but for all intents and purposes, let's just say second pair Robertson Borgen, third pair Fortescue Schneider. Fortescue was with Schneider, Robertson was with Borgen. And you know what? Like, and again, maybe part of this is specialties. There was a lot of penalties in the third. There wasn't really much of any in the first couple of periods, but I don't know. Based on the ice time, I think it might be fair to say that maybe Fortescue Schneider is the number two pair. Again, we're getting into semantics, and that's not the important part here. But I think that those are probably going to be your sixth defense. I think Fortescue is going to be in there, and I think Iorio for the most part will be a healthy scratch. And I just don't know. The only one that I'm thinking about from a Hartford perspective would be Scott Morrow, but I just don't know that we're going to see him the rest of the way here. I'd be fine. I don't think he did all that well when he was up, but again, just for the sake of giving young players a shot, I'd be totally fine if an injury existed to give him the chance over Iorio. But again, that's getting pretty deep into the weeds. The point I'm trying to make here is that Drew Fortescue, I think there's no reason he really shouldn't get the remaining 10 games, um, you know, on defense for this team. As far as the forwards were concerned, it was the same crew as it was last game. So no changes there. So basically, Adam Edstrom's healthy scratch again. And look, he's going to have a hard time kind of getting back into the lineup. I mean, there's ways to get him in there, but when you consider Noah Laba, he's not that far from a return. Now, I don't know that Laba will necessarily play against the Panthers next game, but he's close. He's, full contact. Whereas like, actually, I apologize. A guy that I did forget about, even though it doesn't make that much of a difference on defense, was Vakanainen. If Vakanainen is healthy, and somehow Fortescue is really struggling, now I would go Fortescue. I suppose under that scenario, maybe for a game or two. Because I remember last year, I think Perreault, and again, different coaching staff, but same front office. And I guess it was also different because the Rangers were kind of fighting for just what was a very limited chance of making the playoffs down the stretch last year. But Perreault, I remember he did sit a few games, which I didn't agree with after he made his debut. So it's not to say for sure that Fortescue will be in there, but again, I think chances are that he will play most of the remaining games here, starting with tonight. And with the forwards again, Laba probably makes his return somewhat soon, but yet again, it was Carson out and Edstrom out. So that's two in a row for Edstrom as a healthy scratch. Look, it's a fairly significant situation there. And would I rather him be in there than like Taylor Radish? Yes, I would. But it's probably the way it's going to be. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Parson the rest of the way. I mean, not for nothing. Johnny Brodzinski had 2 goals in this game. Not that he had done a whole lot recently. It's weird. Johnny Brodzinski has very good numbers against the Chicago Blackhawks, which I guess shouldn't be that weird because they just haven't been that good the last few years. But so yeah, it's what you saw tonight really plus Laba and take your choice. It'll be actually interesting to see. This isn't a conversation for this episode, but maybe the next one, assuming that Laba doesn't play next game, is who will be taken out. It's not an easy answer in the sense of what do you do. You assume at that point that Miller goes back to the wing, but then it kind of ends up, one of the young guys, does then Sykora end up, not stay in the top 9 again? We'll see. I'm curious as to some of those things and the decisions made there. But, it was the Zibanejad line as we've seen it. It was Trocheck with Cooley and Sykora. The Miller line has been good and was good again with Carte and Sherry. And then it was Brodzinski centering Radish and Hamelash. So in that, like I said, for the Rangers was Dylan Garand, who, performed well against Winnipeg in a shootout loss. And here did very well. I mean, 27 saves on 28 shots, really did make some good saves along the way. When the game was close and in times when Chicago maybe could have made it slightly interesting, Garand played well. And I think right now, me hoping the Rangers lose games, I think Jonathan Quick, if he were healthy of the 3 options, he would be the guy that I think would give you the worst performance. And I'm curious, do we see Jonathan Quick again? And I think if he's healthy, and there's a chance that this could be his last year, I think maybe you do see him again. You may not know, and you can only surmise. I don't know if Quick will, there won't be an announcement. And maybe Jonathan Quick wants to play next year. If I'm the Rangers, I would move in a different direction. Look, respect for what Jonathan Quick has done in his career. Maybe he could latch on somewhere else. I tend to think I think this could be it for him in his career. He got off to a good start this year, and then, when the workload increased, he struggled. But I think taking my kind of wants of the Rangers losing aside, it should really mostly be Sykora and Garand, other than if Quick is healthy, which I kind of think that he mostly is. I mean, technically he's day to day. I think he's mostly fine. If they needed him somehow, I think he'd be in there. But if Jonathan Quick, if there is the chance that maybe this is his last year, then at that point, I do think that you probably will see him at least one more time. So it's very hard to predict right now with Quick kind of kind of lingering. What it does kind of tell me is like, and I'm totally good with this as well, is really Shesterkin in these last 9 games coming up here shouldn't play much more than Garand and or Quick, right? And I'd like to believe that that will be the case. I would not have Igor be playing games left and right. It just doesn't make sense. Let's see what Garand can do. So for Chicago, again, coming off of they lost handily to the Philadelphia Flyers, last night. Spencer Knight was in goal for Chicago in Philly. The Rangers saw Spencer Knight shut them out in Chicago back on December 10th in a 3-0 Blackhawks win. Here it was Arvid Soderblom. He was in that for Chicago in this one. Really, there was not much he could do. I mean, he makes 33 saves on 39 shots. He was, tested quite a bit, especially in that second period, but just in general. But yeah, let's go through this one. Again, a lot of firsts. Garand's first win. Sykora first goal. Fortescue first assist. I might be forgetting something else as well. It just feels like there's a lot of, rookies being incorporated, and that's the way that you want it to be at this point. But the first period, fairly back and forth. I thought Chicago got off to a pretty good start, and you kind of expect that coming off of what they had done the night before. But the Rangers started to play better and better as the period was going on. But again, still, I would say for the most part, back and forth action. Good saves by Garand, good saves by Soderblom. Posts on both sides. Chicago hit an early post. I think Fortescue hit a post. But Chicago's the one that breaks through for the first goal, which gave me a little bit of hope at the time. And it was Nick Lourdes scoring his 8th goal of the season, assisted by Bertuzzi and Vlasic at 17:34. A bad turnover by Will Borgen, who really just has not been very good lately. Borgen, with the turnover, and this basically leads to a situation where Chicago has numbers in front. And I think Sykora might have been a little bit late to get to his man Lourdes. It was the Trocheck line that was on at that point with Robertson and Borgen, which was the pair. And it was basically Vlasic kind of makes a nice move around Cooley. It goes to Bertuzzi, and Lourdes is wide open in front to score to make it 1-0. But the Rangers had a quick response at 18. And this is kind of what I was hoping wouldn't happen, and it did. The Rangers tie the game up less than a minute later. It's JT Miller scoring his 15th goal of the season from Sherry and Schneider. And whether it be Laba or Miller, when it's been Sherry and Cartier on the wings, that has been one of the better line. But that has been, I would say, probably their most consistent line in the last couple of weeks. And for JT Miller's 15 goals that he has this year, it feels like maybe at least 5 of them, at least, have kind of gone off a skate or off a shin pad, off of some body part. Like, it hasn't been clean, the ones that he has scored. And this was one that was originally given to Sherry, but was correctly changed. So it took a point off the board for Cartier, which is kind of unfortunate. He originally had a secondary assist, but this was one really not a good play by Connor Bedard in front of the net, where the Blackhawks had such a hard time getting the puck out of the zone. Turnovers all over the place. You could just see this is just not a good team. Really, the Rangers, as bad as they are, this is me not giving the Rangers credit. It's more speaking poorly on Chicago. And Calgary's been good lately, but Calgary, with them, they're very home road dependent. And unfortunately, Calgary has a lot of road games coming up, which I'm a little bit concerned about. But the Rangers really are better. Again, this isn't me saying the Rangers have this amazingly bright future or whatever, but the Rangers are better than the Blackhawks and Flames. It would actually be, in some ways, robbery for the Rangers to end up in a better draft position than those teams would be great and almost a heist. Because, again, Chicago, while they've been gritty at times, they really show that they are not very good. And that was very evident here, where, again, Bedard just, he turns it over in front. Sherry just takes it from him, and Sherry puts it towards the net. Miller gets position on Vlasic. It goes off of Miller, then off of Vlasic, and in. Ties it up at 1. So we go to the second. And like I said, from the penalty front, there was one penalty. At 19:43 of the first, Gavrikov hooks Ryan Donato. The Blackhawks don't have a very good power play. They have a very good penalty kill, actually. like best in the league actually. Although they did allow one power play, Ranger power play goal later in the game, but Blackhawk power play has not been very good. They don't score coming out of the second period, and the Rangers take a 2-1 lead. Matthew Robertson scores his fifth goal of the season, assisted by JT Miller. So give JT Miller a second point at that point. Um, and it was just a situation where Robertson was very aggressive, pinched in, took a shot. It was stopped. It goes to Miller. And Robertson on kind of a, I wouldn't say a tough angle, but it was a nice shot by Robertson. He kind of picked the corner and scored over the left shoulder of Soderblom, and it made it 2-1 Rangers. And then really where you knew it was over, or at least where I knew it was over, was less than 3 minutes later, Adam Sykora. And it was good to see Sykora score. I'm not going to lie. That was good. His first goal of his NHL career in his second game. Again, first game at home, assisted by Will Cooley and Vincent Trocheck. And we're going to talk about a very weird Will Cooley stat. But this was one where, look, the Blackhawks are unable to make the play in the neutral zone. It springs basically a 2-on-1 where Cooley makes a nice pass to an open Sykora and he buries it. So for Will Cooley, he has had not just assisted, I believe a primary assist for rookie goals scored by Sykora, Laba, trying to think who else. Brennan Othman, the one goal he had against the Flyers this year was a Cooley assist on a 2-on-1 as well, actually. Remember that one. And then last season, for Brett Berard's first goal, I believe it was Will Cooley. I'm forgetting one person, and logically, it would be Matthew Robertson, but that isn't so much coming to mind. I guess it could have been Hamelash. Apollo. Oh no. I think it might have been Gabe. I think they might have said it might have been Gabe Perreault. That makes sense. Again, there's a ton of options to have. Perreault kind of makes some sense, but how weird is that? Will Cooley, a guy who, isn't really much of a playmaker, and for him to get primary assists, it's just very weird in terms of right place, right time. And yeah, he has been really the catalyst for a lot of these rookie first NHL goals, and that happens again here. So, that line has really struggled a lot as far as production, the Trocheck line, but they get one there to make it 3-1. And then later on at 16:07, to really sort of put the statement and put the exclamation point on things, Johnny Brodzinski, who probably, if I had to venture a guess, has not scored in a while, given, healthy scratches, Olympic break. Let me check that out, actually, as far as when his last goal was. Again, he scores 2 goals in this game. His last goal was December 20. So this is his first goal of 2026. He had scored against Carolina on December 29th. So Brodzinski gets his 5th goal of the season, assisted by Borgen and Hamelash. And it's Hamelash's first career assist. So there you go. There is a first. Obviously, Hamelash has had a couple of goals, but now he gets an assist, and he was the one that really made it happen. He was the one that really deserves a lot of the credit. Was just very aggressive, just sort of bullied his way to the net. Chicago really had no way to stop him, and the puck ends up getting on the stick of Will Borgen. Quick pass, quick shot. Johnny Brodzinski, who, look, he likes to shoot. He has a pretty good shot. It's definitely one of his strengths, considering the type of player that he is, and he scores to make it 4-1. So again, Hamelash, he's been pretty impressive in limited time, right? He doesn't play a whole lot. This game more. The fourth line played a lot in the third period, with the score being, more lopsided. There were a lot of penalties in the third. It went from kind of like I said, one, and then in the third, there was a good amount. 18 seconds in, Zibanejad slashes Anton Frundell, and the Rangers kill that one off. At 5:36, it's Connor Sherry cross-checking Levshinov, and that was one where they probably could have called him on JT Miller and not Sherry. Sherry had originally gotten hit by Levshinov, kind of went back after him. Miller and Sherry hit him both at the same time, but ultimately it's called on Sherry, but there is no goal scored by Chicago, as again, they were 0 for 3, and they had the first 3 power plays of this game, and they were 0 for 3 on the power play. And then at 9:42, there is after the whistle activity where Chicago ends up taking an extra minor. Del Mastro and Boisvert, they get a couple of roughing minors, and Will Cooley as well. So it gives the Rangers a power play. They don't score on this particular power play, but at 12:50, Vlasic interferes with Hamelash, and this one the Rangers do score on, and it's Alexis Lafreniere. His 22nd goal of the season, scored assisted by Fox and Miller. So JT Miller with 3 points on the night. Of course, he does it in the game you want to lose more than any game, but again, that's not his fault. Um, but yeah, just easy passing. Fox with a simple wrist shot, and Lafreniere tips it in. Lafreniere in that net front Kreider role has had a lot of his goals that way, and it's crazy. Like you think of him as a guy maybe more on the wall on that right side, but maybe this is somewhere where he may stay because he has been very good at these tip-ins, and so that gives the Rangers a 5-1 lead, and adds again to Lafreniere's recent surge. From there, the Rangers score again, and this is where Drew Fortescue gets his first point at the 16-minute mark of the third. Brodzinski's second goal of the game, sixth goal of the season from Radish and Fortescue. Nice play by Fortescue, being able to basically take it into the zone, drives the net, finds Taylor Radish, and then it's a one-time shot goal again by Brodzinski with the quick release. Makes it 6-1 Rangers, and so good on Drew Fortescue in his first game. Looked pretty good. This is a very good landing spot for a first game, and so the Rangers take a 6-1 lead. At 16:23, there is a situation where the Rangers end up with a power play. Vlasic is called for roughing Will Cooley, and there's a fight that breaks out between Will Borgen and Sasha Boisvert. And a couple of pretty big punches thrown. In that one, where Borgen landed one. I think it got up. I think it's crazy. Like he basically, punches him right in the visor. It's got to really your knuckles have got to just be so fucked up after that. But again, that's just what these guys do. But Rangers win at 6-1, and Dylan Garand again. He gets the first star. I mean, the stars of the game. They end up giving it to Garand 1, Sykora 2, Fortescue 3. And so that's kind of the positive out of this, is that you hope that this can, lead to something, right? And it's not going to be this easy. This is really, a bad Chicago team in very ideal circumstances, but you still have to take advantage of that, and they do. And so now the Rangers' next game, it's against the Florida Panthers. 2 of the last 9 games are against Florida, which is a bit concerning for me. Florida's the type of team that, a 2-time defending Stanley Cup team that is not going to make the playoffs. The roster is kind of dwindling. They're still they still have some pretty good guys in the lineup, but it's not the full lineup, right? And they'll be coming off a game against the Islanders, which, if you're Florida, they're coming off of a game going into the Islander game where they might have had. I want to say the shot count versus Minnesota. It was bad. It was almost like it was 50-20. Where they lost at the very end of regulation. So, if they're going to basically play hard, let's say it's one of the two, you would think it'd be more likely the Islander game. You're trying to play some spoiler, where 24 hours later they play the Rangers in Madison Square Garden. I'm concerned that the Rangers could very well win that game, and the Rangers play them again in Florida, second to last game of the year. This is actually the first game against the Panthers this year for the Rangers where there's a roof, because the last time they played them was the Winter Classic, where the Rangers won in Miami. So, we'll see what happens here, but I could certainly see the Rangers winning this one. Look, there's better than the Blackhawk game, right? I can't imagine it's gonna be like that. The Panthers, roster is obviously a lot better than Chicago's, but let's see what happens. The Rangers had that really good stretch out of the Olympic break and then followed up with a 6-game losing streak going 0-5-1. You kind of want to nip this here and not have it be kind of a back and forth situation. Okay, well, now the Rangers win streak happens. It's one thing to win against Chicago. It's another thing to build upon that, because I really would like the Rangers to somehow, even 3 I could kind of settle on, where I think I can be really okay with that. But they're going to finish somewhere in the 2-4 range, most likely, with Chicago and Calgary being the teams that you have to look at, as long as the Rangers don't win a lot of games, and then we have to consider other teams. But, let's see what happens. Sunday matinee game, Rangers-Panthers coming up. This Blackhawk game was the first of 7 home games, so a lot of games in Madison Square coming up for the next couple of weeks. But the Rangers, they end their 6-game losing streak by defeating the Chicago Blackhawks 6-1 where the youth of the New York Rangers certainly made their mark.